Welcome, everybody. If you have headed in this direction, you are once again in violation of jaywalking. That's right, you have reached Jubilee Street, a music podcast. I am your co-host, Jake Curtis, joined by our seminal co-host, Ian McCurtis. Ian, say hi to everybody.
Hello to everyone out there, wherever you might be.
This is our second attempt to record an introduction where I mixed up.
You didn't have to tell them that.
Order of recordings, but it's an honesty, transparent.
He's so honest.
You know,
look how honest this guy is.
And I just have to say, I botched it. I feel bad. We lost all this content. Like 30 seconds of Ian talking about his outfit and how he's always wearing a mask and how he.
Don't call my conversations content. Don't dehumanize the experience like that.
He actually directly called the USPS for his COVID tests, and they said they did not serve people like him, which we were not. We're suing the USPS. Kind of like Greg in Secession suing Greenpeace. We're suing USPS for not giving Ian his COVID test. So no ill will against the USPS. We were wronged by them. Support them, but we want our free COVID tests. So, Ian, we're talking about a Nick Cave song this week. We're finishing up our Boatman's Call residency. Which song are we talking about today?
We today are talking about West
Big
Country
heart
Girl.
where we all live. Plead and counsel and forgive. The widow's peak, her lips I've kissed. A glove of bones at her wrist.
Not West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys. West Country Girl by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds from the Boatman's Call.
So West Country Girl, to kind of get right into it, fucking amazing song. I think it's... I feel like to call any song on Boatman's Call like stripped down is redundant because a lot of them are pretty minimal and they're kind of like making the most with like a very kind of like understated sound and like arrangements and stuff like that. But I think that this song is just as impactful as other songs on the record, and I really, really like the guitar on this song. I think it's like, I think this is one of my favorite songs on Boatman's Call now. I think it's one of the best ones.
Would you agree with me, Jake, that I think this song sounds the most like an old Nick Cave song on this album? Like this sounds, not the music so much because it is so stripped down, but the songwriting sounds like it could have been on one of the first couple records. It's kind of like the weirdest song.
I wonder if there's a reason for that, because I saw a note somewhere, it's not verified, that the first two lines of this song are in reference to PJ Harvey.
Oh, we got a lot of PJ Harvey. I think it's pretty well documented the song's about PJ Harvey.
I think it makes sense that it has kind of an older sound, like back to kind of dating back to like Murder Ballads and even like The Good Son.
Oh, I mean like the first couple, like Firstborn is Dead, like...
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. It has that very kind of clanging gothicness.
Yeah,
to
just
it.
the way the song flows, it just feels a lot weirder than the other songs on this record.
Yeah, well put. I couldn't really put my finger on it because it sounded a little bit different from the other Boatman's Call tracks. So, yeah, good on you for bringing that up. I definitely hear like kind of a vintage quality to it.
Well, there's no attempt at melody really. The whole song's kind of one part. There's not really verses or choruses. It's just one part that goes for the whole song. It just has a lot in common with his early work.
Yeah, it's like a straight shot. I think it's like a very well told like story.
And the lyrics are more abstract than most of this album. These lyrics...
It's very abstract.
Don't make a lot of sense, and I don't think they're trying to.
A couple of lines that stuck out to me were in the second verse, her Spanish fly and her monkey gland, her godly body and its 14 stations, that I have embraced her palpitations, her unborn baby crying, mummy. What do you make of that stuff?
Well, I know Spanish fly is like... I think it might be like an urban myth, but it's this beetle, and if you like grind it up, it's supposed to be an aphrodisiac.
Oh.
in the 80s, it was like a common thing. I think they called like date rape drugs. They called them Spanish fly, but it was it wasn't actually Spanish fly. So I was assuming monkey gland might have been some other urban myth that like the chemicals in monkey glands make you want to have sex, but I don't know about that. And then 14 Stations, isn't that like a kind of like a what am I thinking of? That Indian sex book?
The Kama Sutra?
Yeah, isn't that like a Kama Sutra thing?
The thing that came up here was it's a reference to the 14 Stations of the Cross.
Oh, I was way off.
Which would probably make more sense, but given the sexual nature of some of the lyrics in this song, I don't think that you're far off as far as like, the positioning. And then there are some lines that are just, screaming at you like with sexuality in this song. So I don't think that you were far off with that inference.
I know a lot of people have thought that Palpitations and that next line is one of the PJ Harvey references. She's stated that she gets really bad stage fright and gets heart palpitations before she performs.
Oh, wow.
So people thought that, among other references, that was one of them.
Yeah, he makes this unnamed female person character. He makes them seem very like virile, animalistic, kind of like otherworldly, supernatural, like creature, beast-like. And it kind of seems like maybe he was like building up and breaking down this relationship in this song. And maybe that's why he references the 14 Stations, because he's been going through the steps with like going into rehab, and he's probably doing like the, AA stuff. And it makes me wonder, like, if there isn't something kind of like healing in the quality of like looking back to this relationship that was so seminal to him. There's the word seminal. I don't know if that's what I meant to say.
Shout out
pivotal
seminal.
is what I meant to say. But I'm sure Nick Cave would find a way to say seminal in a song. He would find a funny way to like be like, this is a seminal reference.
Maybe on the new Bad Seeds album, there'll be a song dedicated to us called Seminal.
Seminal. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of talk of like sacrifice, death, the rubble of her body, and how like you sacrifice and lose a part of yourself with rehab, and you come out like you have to work through these like old situations to like find new ways to like cope, be able to figure out if you're still lovable in certain ways. So, what do you make of that stuff?
First, you saying unnamed woman made me want to bring up that in 1997 there were performances of this song that I believe Nick Cave did by himself, where that last line, when he says, meows, he loves you, then meows again, the line was, meows, he loves you, Polly Jean, which is what PJ stands for in PJ Harvey.
Oh,
so
that's great.
I guess on the record he decided to change it and not directly mention her name. But yeah, I think you could be right. I really don't know if this song makes me think of anything directly. It reminds me of something he might have wrote when he was either like fucked up, or you ever write stuff when you're really tired or kind of sick, and then when you're in the right state of mind again, you look at it and it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah.
This seems
definitely.
like one of those things where, like, he wrote it all in 5 minutes, and then, like, 3 days later, it didn't really have a narrative through line, but it was good, so he just kept it.
Just rolled with it?
Just rolled with it. Sometimes that's the coolest stuff. I mean, I love writing things like that.
I'm guessing it was probably just in better taste for him to not reference anyone's name explicitly, but I think with these like big pop culture icons like him, it's hard to, especially for how like famous he was during this time, from all of his like romps on like MTV, and he had a music video with PJ Harvey and they were dating, so it's kind of inescapable. But
I saw a funny joke he made, or just like kind of poking fun at himself. Someone had asked him about this song, and he said, basically like, I dated this woman for a few months and turned it into the biggest heartbreak of the century. Talking about how like kind of blown up, he made the relationship by writing so many songs about her, about what was maybe just a trivial relationship.
It's one of those things where it makes you wonder, like, is any of the pain that came after that, was it worth all of the excellent creativity that came from it? And I think, yeah, in almost all cases, like if you made some great art and you had some heartbreak, you know, there's people like Jason Molina, who's in Songs Ohio, and Magnolia Electric Company, and I think he writes some of the most beautiful, like, music ever. But it's also really sad and unfortunately tinged by a lot of, I think, you know, misogynist sentiment. But I'm not saying Nick's doing that here, but I do think that relationships can often, you know, create a pretty powerful picture for listeners. And it's relatable. What's more relatable than a relationship? I mean, most people, if they've been fortunate enough to date, which most people do, I feel like, you know, there's not a whole lot of people on earth who haven't been able to have sex. I know that is coming from a different place. There are people who probably haven't, but you know what I'm saying. It's relatable.
Or they've longed for people, even if you haven't had any relationships in your life, you've probably felt attraction or even had strong relationships friend-wise or with your family. I mean, human relationships is something, yeah, obviously we all know. Bad things are going to happen in your life no matter what. So you might as well make some art out of it. Like, he was probably going to have this relationship that ended badly, or at least in his eyes ended badly at the time, no matter what. So you might as well write some songs about it and get it out. I
have a lot of like ugly memories about, you know, my first dating experiences and, you know, my experiences like getting drunk and like threatening people and like throwing chairs and like getting very violent. And I find like a lot of solace in these kind of tracks where you're like, it kind of seems like he is enjoying the process, but he's like living through this very like passionate memory, and the instrumentation in the song really like lifts that passion. I think I feel like this feels like it. Is there an album that exists by Nick Cave that you know of that is all acoustic guitar and like no percussion?
Nope, I don't think so. I mean, there's albums, you know, Skeleton Tree doesn't have a lot of drums. There's albums that get close to it, but nothing entirely that way, I don't think.
I wonder why he's never limited himself in that way, because I feel like if there's one quality I've always thought about the Bad Seeds, it's that I probably have said the word understated on this podcast about them since we started recording, but I feel like they're all like everybody in the Bad Seeds, they're all really good at their instruments, and they could all just like write completely different, like way out there, like, you know, grandiose music. And then instead they make these like very seemingly simple songs that are so impactful and powerful. And I think it just speaks to the impact and the lasting power of the Boatman's Call that songs like this are just as impactful over 20 years later.
Well, to answer your question, I would guess that they've never done an acoustic guitar album, probably simply because Nick Cave is a piano player. That's probably how he writes his songs.
Oh, you're right.
I just would think that probably is something that wouldn't appeal to him. But I bet it would be good. Like if Warren just played acoustic guitar and Nick sang.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It wouldn't have to be Nick necessarily, but I think it would just be,
it would be outside of his comfort zone, I'm sure, because I think other than Grinder Man, he doesn't write songs on guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And Grinder Man's a good point. I forgot that he played guitar on that, but I don't know. It just made me think, like, I don't know if he'd ever do it now. I mean, never say never with Nick. They're always like churning out music, but it did make me kind of ponder like what a acoustic like singer-songwriter album would look like from Nick and Warren, or, you know, Nick and the Bad Seeds.
You just gave me another idea for a mashup. Last week there was the London Calling one. What about Neil Young and the Bad Seeds mashup album?
Neil Young and the Bad Seeds? What would it be called?
That's what it'd be called, Neil Young and the Bad Seeds. You just got like the instrumental stems of the Bad Seed songs and put Neil Young vocals over it. Be badass.
What about So we do Neil Young and the Bad Seeds, and then we get Nick Cave and Crazy Horse. Could you imagine what that would sound
Oh, yeah,
like?
it could be a double album. It's a great idea.
Double album. It's funny that you bring that up. I was listening to Neil Young because I'm sure some of our listeners are aware that there was a big thing with Spotify where Neil was asking them to take his music down if they kept Joe Rogan on the platform. So I was thinking about I listened to Helpless.
More people are probably listening to Neil Young this week than have listened to him in like 30 years.
Yeah. We could probably do a whole separate conversation about that, so I'll cut myself off there. But anyway, any other lyrics here stick out to you to keep,
So let's see. You mentioned the beginning, crooked smile and heart-shaped face, that being like PJ Harvey's features. She's from the West Country of England, and I wish this is one of those many times where I wish we were British, because I wish I knew what the connotation that meant. Like, since we're American, if I tell you someone's from Ohio versus California versus Maine, like, we kind of have all these assumptions in our head of like, oh, a Midwest person from Ohio is going to be like more talkative and a certain accent. Someone from California is going to be whatever, blah, blah, blah. I have no idea I'm assuming there's like a preconceived notion that comes with that, but I don't know what it is.
I get the impression that it's a welcoming kind of vibe, because he's got the line right after that where it says, she's got a house big heart where we all live, and plead and counsel and forgive. So I feel like it could just be a reference to like the state of their relationship, where they would just they might have just been constantly in flux, like arguing, or they'd beg for something, they'd get it, they'd do something wrong, they'd ask for forgiveness, counsel, sort of like two artists like finding a place for each other in their own hearts. But we are missing some context there for sure.
Widow's Peak, obviously another one of her features. I think that was all of the PJ Harvey references I saw. And then the last line, which was changed. I saw that she adopted a cat, but it wasn't until after this song was written. So,
it's like he was telling the future or something.
Yeah, he was being a little prophet, the prophet Nick Cave. The line, her accent, which I'm told is broad. I don't know what that means, but it's funny to me. I don't even know why it's funny to me. It just is.
Yeah, there's a lot of like little like sort of tongue-in-cheek, like maybe not purposefully funny lines.
Is broad like an actual type of English accent, or is broad just supposed to be like, you call a girl a broad? Like, I don't even know what it means.
It could be like a play on words, or it could just be, cultural, and we're missing out on that reference. One of my favorite lines is a West Country girl with a big fat cat that looks into her eyes of green. And that's like the closer of the song, and meows he loves you, then meows again. Which, a West Country girl with a big fat cat sounds like that line, life ain't shit but a fat vagina, from, I think it's King Kunta.
That's not the reference I thought you were going to pull out.
Yeah, that's like what it made me think of, because I just kept hearing like fat vagina in my head. And that's one of my favorite Kendrick lines as far as like rap lines, modern rap lines go in the last, 7-10 years or whatever. I don't know. Every time I heard that little stinger at the end, I always kind of chuckled to myself thinking about that.
Of course, green. Her eyes of green, kind of foreshadowing is it the closer? Yeah, the last song on the album, Green Eyes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How much of this record do you think is about PJ Harvey?
I think that almost all of it is.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think that relationship really fucked him up. Maybe it was because of the drug, like wherever he was with drugs, but like I always got the impression that it really fucked him up, and she got over it really quickly.
Sometimes that's the painful thing about relationships, right?
Yeah, I mean, she might have just been healthier physically and mentally, all around at that point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in here that is kind of blaming her too subtly, like into my human heart and filled me with love up to the brim and killed me and rebuilt me back anew with something to look forward to. And I think that in like 4 lines there, he very deftly like captured the human essence of love and sort of the confusing quality of like someone being important to you and also like giving you what you need, but also like giving you so much of it that like it's one of those complicated things, right? Like you can be in these relationships and like there's this thing called love bombing where, and it's usually people who are like very giving. Typically they're people that are a bit more positive, I would say. And they just like bombard people that they like with affection and gifts. And like, you know, it ends up like setting this standard in the relationship that's hard for the other person to live up to. And I wonder if maybe like he wasn't mentally in a place to accept the kind of love, like mature love that maybe she had, or maybe not even mature. I don't, you know, that's for them. We're dissecting like a situation we really have only the vaguest amount of an idea about. We don't know them both personally. But I think that that's a really cool idea to unpack, where it's like what's the happy medium for a relationship? What is like taking too much? What is giving too much? You know?
Yeah. There's a lot of like complicated things with this topic, especially if you're a male songwriter writing about a woman. And I think that might be, last week I mentioned that recently, or not recently, but after this album came out, Nick didn't seem too happy with it and didn't seem to be an album he cared for that much. And I think a lot of that is because of the bitterness that seeps into some of these songs. And
yeah,
it's tough because you don't want to
be
a guy writing a song that's just like women are the problem and I'm sad because my girlfriend left me and she's to blame. But there is a truth to that where like a relationship ends, and since you haven't processed it yet, you blame the other person. And as an artist, you kind of, your duty is to tell the truth. But that's like, that truth is something we have a lot of already in art. A lot of songs where men blame women. So it's like tough. What do you do?
Sometimes the truth is what makes music so relatable, because we're not all that good looking when the mirror gets placed on us. But that's why I read all 4 of those lines, because he does mention that her love was so powerful that it killed him, but it also rebuilt him back anew, which calls back to her godly body and its 14 stations. And basically what Nick is insinuating here is that the physical mental bond that he had with this woman literally destroyed him and gave him this opportunity to rebuild himself back anew. But it also meant that it's like the hero's journey. It's like a good story. The hero can never return unchanged. And I think that this is a good example of like a hero's journey kind of sentiment, where it's like, you know, he might partially be placing blame on the relationship for making him unhappy, but there were all these other things that were killing him at the same time. And who knows, like maybe if he'd never met PJ or the relationship hadn't ended, he may have stayed doing heroin and we wouldn't have gotten all the music that we got now, you know? So, I mean, there's a heroin quality to this. Like, I think sometimes you need to be incredibly broken to find what you need. I think a lot about, like, I haven't dated a lot of people, but I think a lot about, like, my first, like, serious my ex, and I think she just got married, and, you know, she's with, you know, it's been 10 years now since we dated, maybe 9 or 10, and it wasn't a good relationship. You know, we had fun, and it was a lot of firsts, but it wasn't a good relationship. And I think that I dealt with a lot of, like, painful stuff. Like, I said a lot of stupid things, did a lot of stupid things, like, that I had to, you know, had that relationship continued on, I may have never learned from it. You know, I would have stayed unhappy. I wouldn't have, like, learned to speak up for my needs. So, yeah,
You got to get sometimes you got to get torn down to build yourself back up. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I talked about it a lot probably since like I started dealing with like this like weird sleep problem that I still kind of am dealing with, but I'm trying to. It's getting better and better as the days go by. And then, you know, the sort of like depressive breaks that I had back in October leading up to like, you know, I haven't had anything bad in like a month or so, I would say. And, you know, I've been going to therapy and that kind of stuff, but it's, you have to sometimes go really low in order to get back to that high that you want to feel. And I think in our culture, it's really difficult to find like to get a fine line for that kind of thing. Like we're all so much more primed for dopamine now and like just instant gratification. And it's really tough. Like I find myself, it is a struggle for me, especially on weekends when I don't have my day job, to find the structure to like do things that like make me feel happy. And I feel like, you know, this song really kind of reminded me that like there's no easy answers for anything, and sometimes like you do have to feel pain, and it's okay to not be okay, and that eventually everything will be okay. But, you know, you do have to put in that time and that energy to get better.
Yeah, I think the swing of emotions is good. I don't want to go on a huge rant. I'm trying to think of how to as shortly say this as possible. I think with social media and internet and constantly getting little doses of dopamine a day, it's not good because you're never really that happy or that sad. You just always feel kind of sad. I think it's healthy to like feel really sad and really happy and like actually feel strong emotions. And yeah, those like little dopamine hits aren't conducive to that.
Well put.
I got two questions for you, Jake, that are kind of related. Okay. Question one being the line, her
got a little brother-sister situation here?
Yeah,
brother-sister question?
Yeah, a little Gemini situation. Question one, her unborn baby crying mummy, is he suggesting that he got her pregnant? And question number two, against the rubble of her body, is he fantasizing her dead?
Again, I think this is a funny kind of perverted way to talk about coming inside someone and your seed being planted into the egg, and then imagine cracking open that egg, and inside you find this like new person. I think that's kind of what it made me think of. But I definitely think that there was I think that it's about rebirth, but I also think that there's probably some kind of abortion reference going on there.
Yeah, I was wondering that, like on just sort of the standard like genius and song meanings, no one said anything about that, but I was wondering, is he like insinuating that they had an abortion or something?
I think a lot more people get abortions than we think, and I think that they're really none of anyone's business. So maybe no one really wants to speculate, but I would definitely say that there's something there. And I think that a West Country girl with a big fat cat that looks into her eyes of green and meows, he loves you, I think that's kind of a callback to that unborn baby where it's like the cat kind of takes the place of that, you know, something missing component. Something to care for, yeah. And many people experience like a sense of like sacrifice and connection with animals, you know, where animals are, you know, creatures that live a much shorter lifespan and also are typically almost like more devastating to lose than a human family member for some people. So, yeah, there's definitely something there about the unborn baby, though. What was your second question?
No, that was the two questions. The mummy and then rub over body fantasizing her dead.
Forgive me, I didn't. What do you think?
I really don't know. I mean, a lot of the song just confuses me. I'm just kind of taking broad strokes here. I had no idea what those lines meant, which is why I wanted to ask you.
Ayo, reference to her accent, which I'm told is broad.
Broad City. Jake, strokes. Before we get out of here, I wanted to shout out an email we got last week.
We got an email alert.
And look, I careful listeners will remember that we've said this in the past. I appreciate, and Jake appreciates everyone who writes in, but as we said before, if you shout out Blue the Intern Dog, then we will mention you on air. And people don't remember that. Mm-hmm. And thank you for writing in, but you guys don't mention Blue the Intern Dog. And what are we supposed to do? We've already established that that's the rule. So our friend Lisa from Belgium, who wrote to us about a year ago.
Oh, shit.
Wrote
What's up,
us,
Lisa?
She wrote us again about the Brompton Oratory episode and said that she was, I'm guessing, on vacation or something in London and was just walking around and walked into a random church and found out it was the Brompton Oratory, and she sent us some pictures, and it's very beautiful.
Hey, beautiful pictures. Thank you.
And she said, all my love to Blue, so Blue really
Dude,
appreciates it.
I love Lisa.
I know Blue had a tough week because Blue has seasonal affective disorder, so I think that really helped her out a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we call it her peasonal affective disorder, where she has trouble holding her pee.
Man,
so we got to put the puppy pads down.
It's hard for a dog sometimes.
It do be like that. Lisa, we love you so much. Thanks for writing in. Always great to hear from you, and all of my love and Ian's love, and Blue is sending lots of dog kisses.
Say that about
above the belt. Above the belt, appropriate.
Me. You got anything else, Jake?
No. This was West Country Girl. This was a great song. We finished up our, Nick Cave residency and Boatman's Call. We'll be coming at you with some more Nick Cave content down the pipeline. So
maybe we'll start doing a whole month from a record. I kind of like sitting on a record for like a month like this.
I do too. I think I get a little bit more out of it because we get to look at all the songs around it. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we'll do something around this era. Maybe Good Son, No More Shall We Part is kind of on the tip of my tongue. So that one sounds cool. So we'll see. But we would love to hear from you all. So you can email us, jubileestreetpod@gmail.com. for the Jubilee Street mailbag. We love getting questions. If you ever want to ask us questions, sometimes, maybe we'll ask your question on the air and talk about it on a bonus episode if we're getting enough of those entries. So, don't be shy. We love to hear from you. There's no such thing as a stupid question. We've got an Instagram @JubileeStreetPod. We've got a link tree in our bio there where you can find all of our necessary and pertinent links. We've got a YouTube channel. We got Facebook, our Gmail accounts there. Check us out on Spotify. You can now review and rate us, I believe, on Spotify. Follow us and subscribe there. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And once again, if you have left this direction, you are no longer in violation of jaywalking. Thank you for stopping by Jubilee Street.
You're now a law-abiding citizen.
You are now a law-abiding citizen.
Peace out.
Peace out. Got to start the Cops Kids podcast with that stinger.